We're going to have to forge ahead without the live stream for the moment and record it and post it. Dr. LaSousa, you're sending out a message? Okay, thank you, Michelle. Connor, I'm going to start. John, you're good on sound? Molly, you're good on cameras. Excellent, thank you. Sorry for the delay, everybody. I apologize. So welcome to the regular Board of Education meeting. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the school districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the administrative offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough, Chatham Township, Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind taking roll call?
Sure. Mr. Gilfillan. Mr. Arnick.
Here.
Ms. Ciccarelli. Ms. Clark. Here. Ms. Kenny. Mr. Ryan.
Here.
Smith. Ms. Valenti, and Ms. Weber.
Here.
7 present and accounted.
If you're able, please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everybody. I apologize for the technical difficulties. We're having trouble with the software that does the streaming portion. It was working literally up until 7:27, and then the connection dropped and the software is not connecting back. So I apologize for that. It will be posted as soon as the meeting is over. So without further ado, I'm going to send this over to Dr. LaSousa for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. Sorry for the inconvenience on the stream. My portion of the meeting tonight consists of 2 presentations. The first is one of our annual presentations that typically involves our testing. Of course, standardized testing in New Jersey was canceled last year due to the pandemic. But we're still required to report out on the pathways to graduation now that there have been a number of amendments to the graduation requirements in the state. So Sean Devine, who's our Director of Education, is joining us to just give an overview of the graduation results from our class of 2020. And then after Sean finishes his presentation, we'll turn to Ms. Heather Rocco, who's our Supervisor of English Language Arts. She will give a State of the Union on what she and her department have been up to in the field of ELA, and she will address a whole variety of issues, including some of the ones that we've discussed for the past several months regarding equity and themes regarding racial equality, racial injustice, social injustice, and so forth. So those will be the 2 presentations to begin the meeting, and then we'll go on to the formal part of the agenda.
Okay, great. So if board members want to shift to the audience, it might be easier.
Evening, and thank you for having me here tonight to talk to you about the class of 2020 and their pathways to graduation. This is the assessment schedule for last year, state-mandated assessments. As you can see, most of them occur in the spring, and due to the pandemic, the testing for last year was waived and never occurred. At the bottom of the screen, you can just see that the state has not yet released an assessment schedule for the 2020-2021 school year. One of the high school graduation requirements is an assessment that students pass, and there are four pathways to meeting that requirement. The first pathway is a PARC NJ SLA test that the students would pass for both math and ELA. The second pathway is to meet a designated cut score on an alternative assessment. The third pathway is a portfolio assessment, tasks that the students complete under the guidance of teachers at CHS. And there's also a pathway for students to complete as part of their IEPs. The first pathway has PARC, or what are now called NJSLA scores. And you can see some of the cut scores here. 750 corresponds to what would be called a level 4, and 725 as a level 3 is defined by the PARC. The second pathway allows for a variety of substitute competency tests. I've listed for both ELA and for math the ones that were most often used by students at CHS and their corresponding cut scores. So you have the SATs, the ACT tests, the PSATs, and the last test on each column, the AccuPlacer test, which is a test that we typically give to seniors at CHS who have not yet met the requirement before they start the portfolio. In this slide, you can see the ways that the students for the class of 2020 met the requirement in both ELA and math. The majority for both ELA and math passed an NJSLA test. Some students utilized the substitute competency, and you can see that due to the pandemic, the students who were completing the portfolio assessment at the time the pandemic hit did not have an opportunity to submit those to the state. And by Executive Order 117, the governor waived this requirement. So in summary, there were 312 students in the class of 2020. All 312 met the graduation requirements and graduated on time. The current pathways, the three pathways, remain for the classes of 2021 and 2022. That first slide with the note that the state has not yet defined the dates for the assessments obviously is of concern for these students because the less testing opportunities they have to meet the pathways, the graduation requirement remains in effect. And you can see the note there, the last note, that for the class of 2023 and beyond, the state has yet to define how they are going to modify the assessment requirement, but it will be changed in some fashion. All right, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Sean. Next up is Heather, right, Dr. Lucy?
Yes, just wanted to make sure that we don't have any questions from board members for Sean. This may seem a little bit mundane, especially considering what we've been dealing with this year, but There's been a massive amount of litigation over these graduation requirements. They've evolved considerably over the past several years since the introduction of PARC. So there's more flexibility now than there initially was going to be, and we're happy about the added flexibility for students. So it kind of was a long, windy road to get to the point where we have a clear-cut understanding of what our students need for their high school graduation. So just want to make sure there are no questions before we move over to Heather. Yeah, Michelle.
Yeah, yes, the ELA and the math function independently of each other. And so the student can meet, the first pathway with, one of those two, and then, a different pathway for the other one. Right. So the scores for the cut scores for the PARC or the NJSLA, the ones that I showed there, the 750 corresponds to a level 4, the 725, which is the cut score for geometry and algebra 2, corresponds to a level 3. So so one of the changes that, and Dr. LaSousa kind of alluded to the winding road of the assessments. The state defined the two preferred tests for the PARC or the NJSLA as the 10th grade English exam and the Algebra 1 exam. So the students in Chatham typically take the algebra assessment in 8th grade and the 10th grade ELA, obviously, in 10th grade, and are required to at least sit for those two tests before the substitute competency tests go into effect. Right. So one of the things the state has yet to provide guidance on is the class of 2022, who last year as 10th graders were unable to sit for that ELA 10. The state has yet to provide guidance as to whether they're going to make up that test or they're going to allow just the substitute competency test, which most of our students have already met, or some other remedy. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Sean. And now, as I said, we'll transition over to Heather. Heather and her department and several of her team members are here tonight, have been doing great work over the years on enriching the curriculum that we offer to our students and engaging students in meaningful and relevant work so that they derive more meaning from their lives and become better readers and writers. And of course, this is an extremely timely and relevant issue as we talk about all that's happening in our world right now. After Heather, we're going to bring in Steve Mayer at an upcoming meeting, the next meeting likely, so that he can discuss what's going on with social studies. But here we are. Heather can give us the state of affairs and of course, can then take any questions that board members have. So Heather, I turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here with you this evening. Dr. Maya Angelou famously said, "When you know better, you do better." I stand here tonight in the midst of the English Language Arts Department's process of both knowing better and doing better. For the last few years, we have undergone the critical work of questioning why we use certain texts and confronting the fact that we were not working within the spirit of the board policy which requires us to use, quote, materials that represent many religious, ethnic, and cultural groups, end quote. We are also in the midst of understanding both the importance and development of inclusive, equitable learning spaces, which is work that requires us to think beyond the books we use and also consider how we use them. I was invited here tonight to show you some of the work we have done thus far, as well as share our plans to continue the journey. Before I jump into the heart of my presentation, I'd like a moment to say two things. First, I want to acknowledge and address the students who have raised concerns about the ELA curriculum recently. Your recounting of experiences and your urging us for change continue to push our work forward. Informed by your inquiries, a group of ELA teachers met every 2 weeks this summer to read, share, and discuss anti-racist texts written by experts such as Clint Smith, Ibram X. Kendi, Robin DiAngelo, and many more. These conversations contributed to both the short and long-term curriculum planning we are doing. I apologize for mistakes we have made in our classroom. We are working diligently to know and do better. Second, I am honored to be here tonight to show you how the SDOC ELA educators have been and continue to create more equitable curriculum and classrooms. But I want to acknowledge that we are one piece of a much larger equity puzzle that the district is constructing. ELA educators have much to contribute to this work, and I'm excited to lead our part of it. But we need partners from every department and group in order to achieve the goal of equity in our schools. I'm excited to see all we can accomplish together. When I became the 7 to 12 ELA supervisor in Chatham 10 years ago, nearly every text read in our secondary classes was written by a white male author. The selected texts were drawn predominantly from what is commonly referred to as the literary canon, a collection of works deemed exemplary by scholars who date back dozens or even hundreds of years, when access to the publishing industry was mostly limited to men who were white. The literary scholars were predominantly white themselves, so it was not surprising that they gravitated towards and saw exceptional value in books written by authors and with characters who may have looked like themselves and reflected their communities. This connection to and admiration for books that reflect our own lives is a very natural tendency of readers. When we read books that are mirrors, as Dr. Rudine Sims Bishop calls them, we feel seen and valued. Our mirror books might feel more engaging to us as they help us better understand ourselves. We know students are more likely to see themselves as readers and value the act of reading when they have access to mirror books. As an ELA supervisor, then, I need to make sure students from kindergarten through 12th grade have books that have characters who look like them and their families. I need to have books written by women, by men, by Asians, by Hispanics. I need to know that our Black students will read books by Black authors, that our biracial students, one of the largest growing segments of our population, see characters who are biracial too. These diverse books are like all books that share stories about families and joys, conflicts and friendships. We also need to use all types of books as mentor texts, which are books we utilize to study the craft of writing, to show students different writing styles and writing techniques that they may want to try in their own written work. When we use a wide array of books in our classrooms, we appeal to and nurture a wide array of readers. But reading isn't solely a self-centered act. We don't only read books that are mirrors for us. We also read books, to use Dr. Bishop's language again, as windows and sliding glass doors. We read to learn about and better understand experiences, cultures, and families that are unlike our own. When we look into the world of others, we become better informed about their lives and cultures. When we step through the sliding glass doors, we think more critically about others, which informs our understanding of the world. 10 years ago, white males in our student body had dozens of mirrors to look in while they read in our classes, but they had limited opportunities to look through windows or step through sliding glass doors. And every other segment of the population, female, Asian, Hispanic, Black, LGBTQIA+, had dozens of windows to look through, but few opportunities to read a mirror. In this way, we were doing a disservice to all our students. Over the last several years, though, we have examined and revised our ELA curriculum to make it more inclusive, to better balance students' reading options, and to create a community of students who read widely. Within the ELA department, we designed a curriculum priorities tool to guide our work. This document reminds us of what curricular elements are most important when we write and revise curricula. Within each element, we list questions to help us think through our ideas. As we consider how we diversify our curriculum, we ask questions such as, who is included? Who is missing? How are groups being represented? As I said at the beginning of this talk, you have found us in the middle of this work. We know there is much to be done, and we are eager to do it. But I want to highlight for you here 2 examples of units, once firmly cemented in a traditional canon, and explain how we redesign them to be more inclusive. In 10th grade, we have long included a study of Transcendentalism. Transcendentalism was a literary movement in the early 19th century that valued nonconformity, self-reliance, and free thinking. Transcendentalism is often called the first true American literary movement. Its ideals have influenced American writers for over 2 centuries. As we work to expand this unit, Chris Fallon, an English teacher at CHS, proposed a fantastic idea. We would continue to teach the works of Emerson and Thoreau, reading essays such as Self-Reliance and Civil Disobedience, but we would extend this unit to show how the transcendental idea of knowing thyself continues to influence writers today. Students then choose one of 5 or so books to read and study with a small peer group in order to closely examine how modern-day people live or don't live the transcendental idea of individualism. As we chose books for this unit, we selected memoirs, as you see on the screen, that showed a wide range of experiences and cultures, while also making sure that all the books we chose are grounded in the transcendental belief that to know oneself well allows you to pursue a life best suited for you. In 8th grade, we have long used To Kill a Mockingbird to teach historical fiction. As we reviewed the entirety of the 8th grade curriculum, though, we realized that there was little diversity reflected in the text we utilize. In reimagining this unit, then, Gina Bakai, the ELA district leader at the middle school, proposed the idea that we include stories often left untold. With this in mind, we chose historical fiction novels such as Code Talkers, the story of indigenous people who helped crack enemies' codes during World War II, and Fallen Angels, the story of a black soldier who volunteers to serve in Vietnam. We included novels with female protagonists, a group often absent from our curriculum. Books such as Stella by Starlight and Codename Verity. Again, students choose one of these books to read while they study how authors compose historical fiction text that encourage readers to identify with and then learn from characters whose worlds are vastly different from their own. This equity work is also happening in the elementary schools. We have several featured books in our curriculum already that have characters of color, and we continue to diversify our book options in classroom libraries. This summer, the K-5 ELA leaders read dozens of picture books, which we are highlighting in our shared lesson plans that are sent to all elementary teachers. We are currently writing a CEF grant as well to acquire more picture books that feature characters of color into our classroom libraries so that teachers have more diverse book options to use for their read-alouds and within their strategy groups. But here's what else we know. Just adding books to our book closet isn't enough. This work of text inclusivity does not create equitable learning spaces. Book purchases are not anti-racist, anti-bias acts unless teachers develop a deep understanding of what equity in school looks like and how to create these environments in their classrooms. We need to be more intentional in our unit and our lesson design to create equity in our classes. So that is what we are working on next. This August, I curated a collection of anti-racist and anti-bias resources and shared it with ELA teachers, inviting them to use their professional time on in-service days to do professional reading on the topic. This reading time yielded some great discussion amongst faculty members. But this collection barely scratches the surface of the professional learning we will do over the next several years. Due to a very generous funding from the Chatham Education Foundation, we will be working with Dr. Kimberly Parker, teacher, educator, and co-founder of an organization called Disrupt Texts. Our work with her will help us recognize our blind spots, examine our teaching practices, facilitate productive discussions, and create inclusive learning spaces in which all students feel seen and valued. We plan to do similar work with elementary teachers. Conversations are underway to work with an expert to achieve these same goals. This work will never be finished. Over the last 4 years, I have dedicated almost my entire professional learning time to anti-racist and anti-bias work. I've read dozens of books, attended workshops and webinars, and engaged in hundreds of conversations with colleagues in various professional organizations. What I have learned is that this work can be really hard and emotional. This work can make you feel defensive or uncomfortable, but it can also make you feel seen and celebrated. Talking about race or gender can make your heart pound with worry that you are going to say the wrong thing, or even worse, not know what to say at all. But I've also learned that this is all part of the learning process, just as it is part of any learning process. It may feel insurmountable at first, but with some time, some patience, and some great teachers, we will continue to expand our capacity of educators. Every step of the way, we learn something new, and when we know better, we can do better, and that is our plan. I want to thank the Board of Education for the invitation to present to you this evening, and I thank you all for your kind attention.
Thanks, Heather. If you could just stick around for a minute, maybe if the board might have a couple questions. Connor, can you raise the screen, please? Thank you. I wish that worked at home where I told my kids to clean their room. Heather, thanks so much for joining us. It's been a long time coming. We truly wished we could have the opportunity for you to showcase some of what's been going on in years past, in months past, and what's planned in the future. Unfortunately, we got a little derailed with the pandemic, but that being said, the board is at a slight advantage because we understand the work that you're doing and we meet regularly and the curriculum committee meets regularly. But this was a nice opportunity to showcase, what's been going on in the district. I've been on the board, not as long as Matt and Lada, but I've been on the board for 9 years, and that's been through 3 superintendents, 2 assistant superintendents, and the one thing that's been consistent is that the curriculum in every discipline changes every single year. Sometimes it changes semester to semester, marking period to marking period. It is constantly evolving. So when some of the past alumni came in and said, in my class you did this, yes, we did, and we've made some changes. I have a 24-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 20-year-old. Not one of them received the exact same education. It was improved on each time. I think my older guy had only Little Women to choose from, and he just didn't read it. He ditched it, he read the Cliff Notes and moved on. My third son had, as you saw on the screen, a lot more books that were interesting to him. My question, Heather, though, if you wouldn't mind, books often offer perspective. We get to see through other people's lenses, through other people's eyes. Could you go into a little bit about why you chose Ghost Boys, to read as an all book? And it's not the first time that we've done that. We also used Wonder. I don't know if you remember, a couple years ago, we brought the book Wonder in, we brought the author in, and that had to do with bullying and disabilities, and it was an opportunity for the middle schoolers particularly to see through the lens of somebody that struggled with disabilities, and then, why were people bullying him? And it was really a great novel that all the kids could share together and then discuss. So similar to that, you've chosen Ghost Boys,
Yes.
which I read, I thought it was excellent.
Thank you.
So if you don't mind, if you could just elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes. So Ghost Boys is going to be our one book, one community read. So that is something that, as you mentioned, Wonder, we've read Schooled, which was on my slide. We've read Drums, Girls, and Dangerous Pie, as well as In Paths, and we always try and accompany with it an author visit. What we love about Ghost Boys are a few things. First, it hits that really difficult spot that's sometimes hard to find in engaging sixth graders as well as eighth graders because of how the story is told. So we love that about it. We also try and pick a one book when we're doing a whole school read that does feel of the moment. And Ghost Boys feels very much of the moment. But in addition, it provides historical context. So it's not just standing alone as this is happening right now in the moment. It also asks us to look backwards. And Jewel Parker Rhodes, who wrote the book, includes Emmett Till in the story. And we learn about what happened historically as well. So we liked the crossover into the history part of it. Additionally, Ms. Rhodes is a fantastic speaker and very dynamic, and when we reached out to her, she enthusiastically agreed that she would, even in these unusual circumstances, participate in a virtual author visit, and that was very exciting to us. Ms. Rhodes, I believe, is going to be one of the first authors of color that we've ever had visit a school in Chatham. And that was something that was really important to us as well. So we put all of that together. We read lots of options. Part of the grant committee, the teachers who wrote the grant are here today. They read a lot, we read a lot, and this was the choice that we made, and we're really excited about it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I just want to open it up to the board if there's other questions. Sure, is your mic on? Sorry, I can't tell.
Spoken with several.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I apologize.
The top button?
It's on, it's great.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
There we go. Thank you, Heather. I've spoken with several constituents who probably grew up in a similar manner that I did, in a more closed thinking way, as many of us did back in the day, because we're old. And something you said up here, I think, deserves to be repeated and stressed. You mentioned that when you first was delving into developing this curriculum, it made you feel defensive. But then it made you feel uncomfortable. And it kind of reminded me of like working with a trainer at a gym. Mm-hmm. If you just go on the exercise bike, at a lackadaisical pace for an hour every day, you're not going to lose weight. It's when you stretch those muscles and push limits that you find growth. And that it occurred to me what you said applies in a mental capacity, and I appreciated the way you explained it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Heather. Can you tell us a little bit more about Ghost Boys in terms of what's the overall theme of the book, and is it in any way representing police officers in a bad light?
Yeah, so one of the characters in the book is the police officer's daughter. So she befriends, and you have to roll with the story a little bit, the young man is killed, he becomes a ghost, but the daughter of the police officer and the student are able to communicate and develop a friendship. So we get into some of that mystical stuff as well. But yes, and so then through their relationship, we get to know more about the police officer, and we get to talk with that part of the conversation, or engage that part of the conversation. So yes, there is a role there as well.
Okay, so is the police officer portrayed as racist?
The police officer is portrayed as making a really bad decision.
Based on systemic racism in his past?
The child, the 12-year-old boy had a toy gun, and the police officer shot him, and it killed him. And it was just as some of the things that we're dealing with now, grounded in racism, grounded in a bad decision. It's part of the engagement of the book is for kids and us to think about that. Where are those lines? Sometimes we're doing it without thought. There is not an outward racist thought that you're having, but there's this implicit bias that then influences our actions. And that's part of the questions that we're raising with this text, as well as some other texts. How do we circumvent, how do we recognize our own implicit bias and then work to deconstruct that so that then we're better able to make decisions in a moment or over a long period of time that are more reflective of who we are and who we want to be.
I just want to make sure, and I know you're aware of this, you know, if we had you're going to have to figure this out as you go along, but a balanced approach, this type of subject would probably be valuable. We have police officers in our schools right now.
Yeah.
Don't want to not make them, but influence some of the students to have negative thoughts about police officers in general.
Yeah, and I want you to know that we are looking to actually partner with our SRO, our security officer as well, to be part of those conversations with students. So.
Mine to be more holistic here. It's one thing to have kids read. The discussions probably going to have a larger impact in terms of how kids reflect, smaller group settings. So, Mike, is this a part of a more holistic effort in terms of not only exposing our kids to authors of different, whether that be African American or wherever, but what are we doing from a perspective of creating opportunities for more interaction between our students and our teachers or guest speakers? Is this a simple part of what the effort is, or is this basically the line of what we're taking to improve relations? Because one thing, when you read these books, you read about anti-racism. Anti-racism, they talk about basically it's a egalitarian world, right, where there's no such thing as racism. So to me, I get very, not nervous, but I sit there and reflect on some of these books that we see, but I didn't see much in there. Maybe I missed it on anti-Semitism. So I don't want to miss any aspect of the anti-racist world and focus on any individual vertical of racism, because if we're going to truly move towards an anti-racist society, all racism is gone. All racism is gone, right? So how are we handling that from a perspective, yes, with the differences we're making at the ELA vertical, but how are we integrating this across multiple verticals in order to get a end result?
All that learning, and you can't get the button on top work now.
Peter's battery's charged. Matt, that's a big question, and as I've stated before, the whole issue of equity is enormous. It's bigger than just us. It's bigger than Chatham. There are statewide efforts there have been statewide efforts really the past several years, at least in the Department of Education, to bring more equity and center the work of the DOE around equity. And that involves everything from the type of work that Ms. Rocco describes to the sorts of people who are teaching our students and who are being certificated by the state out of the teacher preparation schools. So I guess the shortish answer to your question is this is a much broader, we are taking a much broader and more holistic approach. So like I think about some of what you just commented on, we did have Attorney General Gerber Gruhl right in this auditorium 1 week before the pandemic shut us down. He met with all of our juniors and seniors, talked about bias, talked about his own experience as a Sikh American. It was a very powerful presentation for those of us who were here. We do have a Holocaust course or a course in the middle school that is required that is based on Holocaust studies. We're the only school district I know of in all of New Jersey that offers a course like that. Last year I went to one of the temples in Summit, or a place of worship in Summit, where they've begun their own museum, and that led to some of our middle school students traveling to see some of what they have curated there. So we're trying to do the work all around us. Ms. Grant last year was making efforts to widen our net for teaching candidates so that we draw from a wider pool of folks than we usually do. And I think, Matt, the most important thing you probably said is that this has to be about meaningful conversations, and it echoes what Ms. Rocco said. It's not just throwing books around and expecting that we're all going to become better people. We have to have expert and thoughtful teachers working with students. And one of the reasons that the grant that Ms. Rocco described also includes some professional development is to help us as educators get better at having some of those difficult discussions and engaging students in ways that are thoughtful and absolutely look at complex issues in complex ways and don't try to just simply paint things as either or without nuance, because of course there is nuance there. And Mike's point about the police is important. I think you all know how much of a fan of the police I am and how tightly I work with our police departments. Chief Gibbons just reached out to me last week about offering instruction to students, as we've done in the past but haven't done it in a few years, in policing and kind of the role of police and their training and how to de-escalate and essentially build more relationships between our adolescent students at the high school and local police departments, which is also important to do. So it's a huge conversation. We don't invite Ms. Rocco tonight just to pretend like she's a panacea for all of the societal ills that we are currently contemplating. This is one part of the puzzle. I think Ms. Rocco has been doing a phenomenal job of trying to evolve us and our department and our students on a path toward more and greater understanding of the world around them by looking and reading and being exposed to a greater diversity of texts. And she also didn't even mention this, but even the type of text and the genres that she's been working with have changed, so that there's just a wider swath of literary experiences that our students are having now than they may have had 10, 15 years ago. I know that was a long and rambling answer.
Ada? Good. Thank you. I don't know if your mic was on. Thank you, Heather. So I think the takeaway is that there's work to do. Our curriculum is a work in progress. It's iterative. I mean, I love the concept that you're working on lesson designs all the time. How do we deliver this material? How do we have meaningful discussions? Some of the students that are in the audience, you will not get exposed to the same material that our K-3 students are learning, and that's okay. That's part of the process. Your education was better than 20 years ago, and 20 years from now, you know, the books will be different. So, you know, it's iterative, and it's good to be challenged. Some people were mad about the demands, and I saw it as an opportunity to showcase some of what's going on and what we're working on. Similar to what Steve did back a couple years ago with our social studies curriculum with religious persecution and how we introduce religion into our curriculum. I thought that was a great opportunity to showcase the curriculum, and I think maybe we can do more of that. And my next comment is to Dr. LaSousa, is there an opportunity to bring Steve in and maybe tie some of these topics into our social studies curriculum and then, keep expanding? I think it's good for people to keep hearing this and understand the type of education. It's not the type of education where you're just going to fill out a workbook and a piece of paper and hand it in. It's not that. Some people won't like it. Some people won't like us talking about LGBT community and thoughts like that. Some people will say, how dare you? Well, you know what? Get on board, because we are going to push the envelope. And I'm happy the kids are going to challenge us and continue to challenge us. We're not going to get it right every time, but we're going to do our best. So thank you. We appreciate it. And maybe we can make schedule some time for Mr. Mayor to come in and talk about some of the topics and how we introduce that to our students as well. Yeah. I wanted to put it on record that you said yes. Thank you, Heather. Appreciate you coming out. I know you've had a long day.
Thank you. I
Thank you
appreciate
to the other
time.
teachers. I know you're on your 18th hour of your teaching day, so I really appreciate it. I know 5:30 rolls around very quickly, so we won't hold it against you if you slip out. So just to go through the rest of the agenda, and we will have opportunity for public comments if you just bear with us a few minutes. Dr. LaSousa, did you have anything in addition that you wanted to talk about?
No, I don't think so. We're in, I think, our 5th week, I want to say, of school, which is an accomplishment. And I think that our teachers and students have settled in as each week has gone by. And even though it's not a normal, in a sense, at least it's becoming a little bit more routine and a little bit more normal than it was back in early September. So that's a good thing. I will likely join Ms. Megan Avalone, who is the Borough Department of Health official, on Thursday night for a Q&A that I believe the Borough Department of Health is sponsoring. So we'll take some questions about the current, the current issues and concerns that folks have. And other than that, we're just trying to put one foot in front of the other and keep on moving along. And hopefully, by continuing to be responsible and taking the precautions that we are, we'll be able to keep on moving through weeks of school.
And the students are still rock stars with masks, of social distancing?
Students are rock stars.
Rock stars, excellent. I don't know if anybody saw the 60-minute segment, but the infectious disease doctors were asked if you could have a vaccine or a mask, which would you choose? Every one of them chose a mask. I thought that was interesting, and our students are doing a great job with that, so we appreciate that. We know it's not easy, but thank you for hanging in there with us. Peter, construction update, and just to give you a heads up, I'm going to ask about the testing at the middle school, testing the equipment. So if you wouldn't mind, incorporate that into your report.
Testing of the middle school is about my entire report.
Okay.
With the middle school auditorium, the training sessions for rigging lights and the sound system are occurring. Thanks to James Lawrence for his coordinating and for the testing of the equipment. They found a few things that were not, the installations were not finished, because as they were completing them in March, the companies went on shutdown, and I think some of them forgot to return. So
Okay.
They've been working through those issues, and they're all slowly getting all corrected. So once that's done, I have championed James with trying to do the best full-blown testing of the auditorium that he can.
And
He has to get certain things up and running properly, and then he is trying to determine the best way to test the whole system.
okay. I mean, if we have to, I know Dr. LaSousa gets inquiries sometimes to use some of our venues. Maybe we can ask them to use the middle school auditorium to help us test it, or have a Board of Ed meeting down there. If there's local groups that need to have a venue where they need to socially distance, it'd be a good way to. I just don't want again, my concern is that the warranty expires before we have a chance to really use the facilities.
Well understood. That's what we're going through with James, where they had rigging training last week, and the sounds and the lights are next, and he's trying to figure out what to do. And I gave him your example of putting on the mini, having the high schoolers put on the mini play from last year, or sections of the play, so
Right.
he's embracing the idea.
Okay, I appreciate it. I mean, one guy going to training isn't going to kick the tires sufficiently. As we found out, tonight we had technical difficulties, so I just want to be able to really kick the tires and not lose out on an opportunity to get the equipment fixed before the warranty expires. Okay, anything else, Peter?
That's all I have.
Anybody have any questions for Peter on any of that? Excellent. Moving over to personnel, Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes, we have not met since our last meeting. We are today.
Okay, great. Curriculum, Ms. Kenny?
We have also not met.
Okay, although this was kind of an open curriculum meeting on ELA. Finance and facilities, Matt?
Yes, we met, we had conversation about athletic transportation. That was it.
Okay, excellent. Policy and planning, Mr. Ryan?
We have not met since the last meeting later on in the month.
Okay, excellent. Liaisons, Michelle Clark, you had something?
I've been in touch, Casey Ewald from the township reached out about Halloween, and just that on the township website is all the information regarding how to safely celebrate Halloween pertains to our clientele, for homeowners who plan to distribute candy and for kids who plan to go and get it. And I actually read through every bit of it. It's actually really sensible, really safe, and I think our kids could have a really safe Halloween. I think they deserve it, and I hope maybe, Mike, if you look at it, you could see if some of it's relevant and would be appropriate to put on our website. It's distributed from the Joint Madison Board of Health, and it just had some good suggestions about keeping everyone safe. So she just wanted me to pass that along.
Very good, thank you. Lada? For Education Foundation?
Yes, I'd like to let everyone know to save the date for November 14th, 2020. The 8th annual trivia night for Chatham Education Foundation will be taking place. It's going to be a virtual event this year. It's going to be PG, and so hopefully families and friends can get together and have a very fun night for as an event. And there's a CEF representative who's going to finish up the update.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Any other liaison reports? Excellent. So I make a motion to pass the minutes of the September 21st public and executive session. And I believe Matt and Sal were the only two absent? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Two abstentions.
Duly noted, passes 502.
Excellent, thank you. So we have our first opportunity for public commentary. A hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting, and to help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. And if you wouldn't mind, just a reminder, this is not a back and forth, this is not a Q&A, this is an opportunity for you to express some comments, compliments, anything that you want to say. Again, if you could keep it to a reasonable amount of time, that would be great.
Jane, I'm sorry, right before you start, if everyone would please remember to sign in. There's a sign-in sheet on the table next to the podium. Thank you.
And if you could introduce yourselves while we know who many of you are, if you could introduce yourself on the microphone, that'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Jane Devlin, Aunt Jane. I appreciate the presentation tonight. It was enlightening and did a lot to allay misconceptions that the school district of Chatham is not involving or working to know better and do better. So it did, I want to repeat that, it did a lot to allay misconceptions and reassure. The curriculum clearly is expanding. It's unfortunate that this important meeting tonight of all nights had the technical difficulties preventing it to be live streamed. So that said, I wonder if this presentation can be posted to the high school students and the comments that the board made afterwards, which were so spot on, and could be posted to the high school students and be made available on the website. Because even though the Board of Ed meeting is always, the minutes are always there, videotaped and always there, not everybody does view the entire Board of Ed meetings. And again, tonight's presentation was excellent, in my opinion. I would like to also suggest, moving forward, if the Board of Ed does receive any letters on any topic that has been requested to be made part of the public record, that the Board of Education, if they're not reading the letters into the record, simply cite the topic of the letter and whether it was pro and con. I'm not suggesting that the letters be summarized or extrapolated comments from them. I mean something very basic. Say, for example, 6 letters were received on topic X, and 4 of them were in support of it and 2 of them opposed. Or 7 letters were received encouraging the administration and board to consider changes in X policy. Just a little summation, if you are getting written communications, what they're about. Maybe 6 letters were received on paving the athletic fields, or 7 letters were received last month suggesting policy changes, or 2 letters were received regarding budget topics. So something very general, so we have an idea maybe what's coming into the board. I would also like to suggest at each board meeting that you remind, as part of the opening comments, that letters are in fact read by the board. But should the writer want their comments memorialized in the record via video, the best way is to attend in person and address the board directly from the microphone. To kind of remind people of that they have this opportunity, if they feel passionate about a topic, come here and state your remarks. Lastly, I would like to still encourage what I did last month, a compromise for those folks unable to attend a meeting in person. Perhaps they can't come because they're older, or they may have childcare problems the night the Board of Ed meeting is being held, or maybe they are out of state in college, that they be able to designate a proxy to come to the meeting and read their comments in front of the microphone. So those are just some thoughts out loud that I had. And again, I just want to close with my compliments about tonight's presentation and the positivity I did feel about the direction the curriculum's going in. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jane. The meetings are always posted shortly after.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm George Iannuzzi. I'm one of the middle school English teachers in the district, and I'm here tonight on behalf of myself and my 3 colleagues, Gina Bakay, Sarah Pasternak, and Christine Quintero. I just want to start by saying that we stand behind everything that our supervisor, Heather Rocco, presented tonight, and are really looking forward to continuing the work that she laid out. But on behalf of all of us, we really want to thank the Chatham Education Foundation for supporting our Chatham Middle School Social Justice Community Read Grant. We are super excited to learn and grow with the whole community. We also want to thank the brave students who have spoken at the past few Board of Education meetings and at the teach-in this past July. Your willingness to use your voice and hold the people accountable that need to be held accountable is inspiring. We wrote this grant in part because we heard you. We heard you come to these meetings and explicitly describe the ways you have been hurt in our schools. And as educators, when we hear a child say that they have been hurt, we don't try to explain it away. We don't try to justify the actions of others. We apologize. We try to make things right. We try to be better. The 4 of us would like to say it clearly to those students. We are sorry, and we promise to do better. This grant is our way of starting to do this work. because it is really just the beginning. We worked on this grant throughout the summer while also preparing ourselves to teach in this hybrid model because we knew we had to start somewhere. To the Board of Ed, we'd like to thank you also for introducing the grant and giving it a show of support at last month's meeting. We're glad to hear that you find this work important, and we hope that you see it the same way that we do, as a small piece of a much larger undertaking. As English teachers, this kind of anti-racist work falls a bit more easily under our domain, and we understand that. We look forward to seeing this work extend further than the English and maybe history departments, as students participate in many classes beyond those two domains each and every year. In reality, this work extends beyond content and curriculum and is really about humanity, which makes sense because teaching is a human endeavor first. We know from previous Board of Ed meetings that the wheels are turning and options for equity training are being explored for all staff, and we look forward to seeing these efforts come to fruition. So to wrap it all up, once more, thank you to the Chatham Education Foundation for supporting this grant. We are thrilled to be taking this first step, and we can't wait to see how else the work will continue in our schools beyond the grant. Thank you.
Any additional public comments? There's another opportunity at the end if there's nobody. 3 more. Somebody.
I would ask in a matter of time if people know that they are going to speak, if they'd kind of line up or come down closer to the podium so that we don't have to wait so long between speakers. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Whitney. I'm the grants chair this year for the Chatham Education Foundation. And first I wanted to thank the Board of Ed, the district, and the grant applicants who've put forward the grants for this cycle, for their thoughtful and engaging grants to help our students reach higher. We're actually awarding 3 grants tonight. One you've heard a lot about, that's the Chatham Middle School Community Social Justice Read. And there's also 2 Ready Reader grants in the amount of over $26,700 for these grants. You've heard from a number of people today about the Community Social Justice Read, so I won't go into great detail on it. It uses a multifaceted approach centering around the reading of a common text, Ghost Boys. It includes professional development by Dr. Parker for both the ELA staff at the middle school and the high school, author interactions, over 1,200 copies of the book Ghost Boys for middle school students, and I believe the entire middle school staff will also be receiving them. And some additional nonfiction texts to the middle school ELA classroom libraries, because of course, if you're doing ELA work, you need opportunities for text connections and written reflections. For the Ready Readers grant, that is actually going to benefit struggling readers, grades 1 through 3 in the 3 lower elementary schools, Washington, SBS, and Milton. The grant gives a research-based resource to help individual students with different learning styles and interests, and it supports the individualized instruction that struggling readers need. It includes many copies of over 130 new titles for reading levels A through K, so quite a few students will be able to use them, lots of students will be able to use them. And it also is different than some others because it includes teaching tools to support virtual as well as the in-class students with access to digitalized leveled books and folders that focus on oral reading and comprehension and lesson ideas and materials. So this has been a busy year for Chatham Education Foundation, as you all have seen from my visits here. So we also gave 3 grants in August. That was the Milton Avenue Outdoor Classroom, the Clear Masks for Clear Communications, which was a district grant that gave 200 clear masks to teachers and staff, and then Using Technology for Engagement, which was also a district grant. It purchased access to 3 platforms to provide teachers additional resources to help them create engaging lessons to be used in both virtual learning and in the classroom. So this year so far, we've given over $58,000 in grants, and it's only October. So this is a huge number for us. Normally, we give about $100,000 over the whole school year, So the fact that we've already given over 58,000 is terrific, and we applaud the grant applicants who've come up with these terrific grants to help their students reach higher. I give a plea out there to anybody who watches this. We're relying very heavily on individual donations this year. Because of the pandemic, our big in-person fundraisers have been canceled. So if you'd like to show your support for any of these grants, or I hear from what Ms. Rocco was saying, there's more diversity grants to come. Please go to our website, chathamedfoundation.org, and no amount is too small. And if you're thinking big, CEF happily accepts appreciated stock and named endowment gifts. So contact us if you're interested. So thank you to all the donors who've enabled us to continue giving back grants to the district to help our students reach higher. And with my prop here, we've given $1.5 million so far back to the district. So in sum, thank you. And as Ms. Kennedy mentioned, there is a virtual trivia night on November 14th. So look out for that on our website for details. So thank you again for everybody for your support of Chatham Education Foundation. And thank you again to the grant recipients.
Thank you. Only 58,000 October. Thank you. You guys can just both sign in so you know ahead of time. Could you sign in while we're waiting? Since you know you're going to speak anyway, it'll just save a little time.
Want me to just get started? Yes, sure. Okay. I'll sign in after. Hi, I'm Amy Reale, and I'm here to say thank you again to the board for all the work that you've been doing. I felt so bad at the beginning of the school year knowing how much work you did and how difficult and how sorry I was that that had to be so difficult. And I just really want to reiterate my appreciation for all the doubling down and everything that you had to do, especially you, Dr. D'Souza. And I am so thrilled to hear these presentations tonight. And I knew that, Ms. Rocco, you were going to be here tonight, so I sort of geared what I wanted to say in part one towards what you were saying. I guess I feel in good company because I'm a former English teacher myself, 9th grade English, and I love reading, and I'm probably a very typical English teacher. There's probably a handful of people in this room that don't cringe when you say poetry, and I'm in that camp. And probably like you, my ideal vacation would be to head to Alaska and find Chris McCandless's bus. But they did remove it, I will say. I used to live in Alaska, so maybe a writer's Ireland then, something different. But anyway, my point is, philosophically, I'm right in step with everything you've done, especially everything tonight. I was at a presentation that you gave as a member of Chatham CPEG, and because of personal circumstances and working with my group, I really had to do a deep dive onto best literacy practices, and I really had to challenge my own philosophy. I was a Nancy Atwell workshop gal myself, and the research, unfortunately, doesn't really support the Lucy Calkins Readers and Writers Workshop or the Fountas and Pinnell leveled reading system. So as a teacher, a former teacher, this was kind of hard for me to read because I did a lot of Atwell's workshopping, but, and I still do think that once readers are skilled readers, there's a lot of elements of the workshop that are so positive. I really want to address the early literacy and the learning and struggling readers. There's nothing more researched than reading in education. There is nothing that we can read more research on, and believe me, in the last 3 years, I think I've read it all. And there's so much to support shifting to a structured literacy over a balanced literacy program. I don't have access to the numbers of the school district. I'm only going on generalized numbers, but 40% of kids in a classroom are probably like us. We love to read. It came easily. 35% struggle. 25% need intensive intervention. So I'm just wondering, I know that Dr. Alonso, she left tonight and she's already gotten so much started in this direction. We have somewhat of a structured program in kindergarten. And for basic skills and resource room, we're making improvements and adding Wilson reading. I'm just wondering if, and I know these are rhetorical questions, I'm just wondering if you would be willing to look at doing some of those same foundations and early literacy work and training the teachers K through 2 and not just kindergarten. And to reevaluate, and I know this is a years-long process, the Fountains Pinnell and Lucy Calkins curriculum that we use. Can we commit to using programs that are based on the science of reading? Because when we know better, we do better. Can we invest in our teachers, knowing this training doesn't necessarily exist at the college level and the certification level, especially K through 2, special ed, and general ed? I'm excited to read about the grant for decodable readers, but I'm skeptical because it's Fountains and Pinnell system. And I think if we're going to look at equity, we have to also expand and look at guided reading groups and these leveled readers and this system of leveling and what it does to our students. There's not a lot of proof that it's effective. So again, I just want to say, I know there's so many positive things happening, and I just want to make myself available as a resource or someone to start the conversation, because I just believe so heartily in reevaluating the balanced literacy in our early readers and what that does for what we want to create as lifelong learners, as fellow English teachers. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Joe?
Joe Bezralian, 24 Fairfax Terrace. I first wanted to express my gratitude and admiration to Ms. Rocco for her presentation. She had me when she said she's been on a deep journey of learning and reading over the past 4 years and has been incredibly dedicated to learning so much about so many perspectives that are out there. I have so much faith in you, Ms. Rocco, your leadership, and also your participation in the team of teachers. I feel we're really on the right track. I feel that people like you is why I'm in Chatham. I was actually getting the chills a little bit when I heard some of the comments up here. And to you and to Mr. Iannuzzi and the other teachers who developed the idea for this grant and who followed through, and the Education Foundation and others, I mean, you just have my admiration. I feel like we're really in the company of learners and growers and people who are coming to the education system as humans and are here for our kids and their development and as human beings. So I'm so grateful to you. Thank you. I also wanted to say that after reading Ghost Boys, which I thought was excellent, I would like to, in my opinion, answer the question that it depicts everybody in the book as human. It depicts the police officer humanely, as we should try to think about every human as a human. So it's not in a negative light. Each person in the book goes through a personal journey, a thought process, and there's in my opinion, there's nothing negative about that. In fact, that is actually a positive depiction. To know that we do things, and we have implicit biases, issues, things we all have to work out. And this one individual, this one police officer, is really working on things. And it's really something to see. So I think it is a really constructive book for all of us. So I would just say that I'm still reading books. I think it's, as I came in the past, and I think that the more we read and learn from each other, and the more we can be trained by experts on how to think about things and how to engage others, I think the better off we'll be. So thank you. Thank you for your time, and thank you so much for your dedication. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Any additional opportunities for public? We have another opportunity at the end. Good. Amy, could you hold off till the second opportunity, or do you have to go?
Well, it's my anniversary.
Oh, all right, all right, all right, all right. You got me on that one. Anniversaries. Okay.
You want to go? Good evening, Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. I lived in town for 35 years. Think of myself as involved, try to contribute where I can. Attended school board meetings for the last 8 or 9 years. I thought I had an idea of what was going on, but I must have been asleep because I missed the part where this community turned into nothing but a den of hopeless and irredeemable racists. I think that these terms are being thrown around too casually, too gratuitously. Words like bigot, racist, homophobe, misogynist, Nazi, fascist, their cavalier use has almost rendered them meaningless. Let me give you a good example. Last winter, on national TV, Senator Harris called out in a very blatant way, called out Joe Biden as a racist. Wasn't subtle at all. Now it appears that they are the best of friends. So pardon me for being puzzled. Is Joe Biden still a racist? Or has he been forgiven? And if he's been forgiven, by whom? Is Senator Harris serious about what she said? Or was she just a cynical politician trying to gain political traction? These things are very puzzling. About an hour south of here in Princeton, the president of Princeton University wrote a letter to the community apologizing for Princeton's racist past and said they still struggle with the disease today. The Department of Education took note and wrote a response and said, if you're running a racist enterprise, perhaps you're not worthy of taxpayer dollars. Princeton's response, dripping with Ivy League condescension, was along the lines of, very funny, ha ha. To others, it was a put up or shut up moment. Prove it, and please stop talking out of both sides of your mouth. We have a situation here in town. We had a group of young adults who made charges, essentially charged the community, and if they're going to charge the school board, it seems to me the school board is the community, with being irredeemably and systemically corrupt. I've met too many good people here, too many decent people to buy into that charge. It seems to me that their charges run along the lines of, well, they had to read To Kill a Mockingbird. There were anecdotes of their fellow students behaving badly in the hallways. And for many of them, they expressed disappointment of having to grow up in the bubble of Chatham. Now, I know that that can be tough. It can be very jarring to wake up one day and discover there's no Santa Claus. There's nothing quite like luxury's disappointments. Their prescriptions, the road to salvation anyway, seems to be followed by their prescriptions. I've read the list of demands, and quite frankly, it was one of the few times I was disappointed in Chatham students. There was not one original thought expressed in the entire litany. It was a regurgitation of somebody else's playbook, a fill-in-the-blank exercise. Dear, put in your superintendent or board member's name here. We, the students of, fill in your high school name here. And of course, no list of demands would be complete without a reference to the gospel according to Angela Davis. For those of you old enough to remember, she is not without sin, and I'll just leave it at that. I hope that these young people were watching when a member of this community came in a meeting or three ago, and I'm paraphrasing here, but she said, "I didn't move to Chatham to have a bunch of white kids tell my daughter she was oppressed." Their vision of saving the world, not everybody's on board with it. And not everybody's on board with the paternalistic attitude and the co-opting of the process. I think that you have to be very, very careful about how this is approached. And I fear for what might be called the tyranny of the tolerant. You disagree with me, as if you disagree with Miss D'Angelo, you disagree with me and you're a racist. And we have to be very, very careful about that. I'll leave you with this. There's a prophet from the Old Testament, a dead male. I know they're not popular these days, the patriarchy and all that. But they were very keen observers of human behavior. And Micah left us with this bit of wisdom. Walk humbly before God when you carry a virtuous sword. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. Back because it's Amy's anniversary, so happy anniversary.
Thank you. 17. Okay, I'm sorry to be in front of you again. This is more a CPEG business, but you know, when I started out as CPEG and I came to a year and a half, 2 years ago, we started with literacy because I thought, well, this is easy. Like I said, we don't have anything that's more researched and it affects the most people. And I think we have made strides. But I'm here again tonight because just in the last month and a half, I've talked with 4 families. Although one was second grade, 3 were in middle school, and it was having related, struggling reading issues and late diagnosis. These are the things I came to you about, one of the important things I came to you about a year and a half ago through CPEG. So, I know we're making positive strides, but I want you to know that kids are still falling through the cracks, and a delay in diagnosis and treatment means that all problems and the negative consequences of reading failure are already underway at a young age. And, unfortunately, potentially missing the beautiful texts like Ghost Boys and the other things that are being offered at the middle and high school level. So I'm just going to say these are questions, and I also have understood after doing this, I really don't have access to the information that you might have access to. And as much as we've tried to do some sharing, I'm limited in what I know and what I can advise. I just know there are still families falling through the cracks, and while we're maybe doing better in the younger years, we may also have a bubble of kids who have not gotten that approach and are really still struggling. So questions, if I were a board member, that I would ask, that I would have. 1, and I know these are rhetorical. 1, what are our proficiency rates by building? At each grade level, how many students are a year or more behind? It's not enough to just say 5% of our student body is meeting a benchmark. I would want to know at each grade level how many are a year or more behind. That's significant. What data do we collect? Does it have a standard score comparison for our struggling readers? Each assessment that we give, I've been told, and I'm afraid to look at Dr. D'Elia because he's probably rolling his eyes at me. I've been told so often, oh, well, we use plenty. We use 9 or 10 assessments. The trend is always to add more. I'm not looking to add more. I want us to look at the cost of each assessment. What is the time it costs, the instructional time, and what is the cost per pupil? What is the value of that assessment? Who does it evaluate? Let's dig deeper because we know kids are falling through the cracks. Are we operating in silos or as 5 fingers on a hand? Often I've heard, well, special education does this, you should go to this person. Well, that's actually the general education person you have to talk to. For math, it's Mrs. Winters. For ELA, it's Mrs. Rocco. I'm sorry, is it Dr. Rocco? I apologize. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh, wait, that's your case manager you have to see. It's very confusing. It never feels like we're 5 fingers on the same hand when you're in special education and you have a struggling student. What are the costs to training and hiring a teacher to deliver the right remediation versus paying for a lawsuit? This is taxpayer money. What are the costs to kids and families tutoring after school? I know my daughter was diagnosed with a math disability at first grade. It's so improbable to have a kid who's struggling all day long come home and have to do tutoring when they're that young. Reading interventions are supposed to happen 3 to 5 times a week. They cost between $80 and $120, $130 for OG tutoring. For families to find out late that they're diagnosed with dyslexia can cost $3,000 to $6,000. So let's survey our families. Do we talk to people who are leaving the district, who are in special education? Why are they leaving? What are their costs? Lastly, my one piece of advice is to use your volunteers. CPEG has had many volunteers share at task force meetings, host events, offered to be real case studies for you to look at where things can go off the rails. Personally, with my background in education and my training in multisensory math specifically, I have offered to do the SMARTS classes, to do a number sense course, to do book studies, and I just would suggest that maybe we approach this dilemma, and I'm really here to strongly tell you it is still a dilemma, that we approach this dilemma with curiosity. Let's rip the covers off the bed and find out what's going on, and not defensiveness, just as we're doing in this other area and everyone is doing so well. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Matt Marquet. I am at 48 Elmwood Ave in Chatham, and I'm class of 2019. I would like to set the record straight on a couple things that were mentioned by the gentleman before me. He graciously brought up Micah, the book of Micah, but he did not finish the scripture. Micah 6:8. Do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Do justice. That is what I feel was done tonight with this presentation. I feel that we, as a school district, admitted the fact that we needed to change the curriculum, and we're working towards that. And I applaud Mrs. Rocco and the English teachers that are here tonight, and I thank Mr. Iannuzzi for his kind words and apology to the students of Chatham. Not that it was his fault, but thank you. I would also like to set the record straight on the list of demands. Demands, not charges, that were presented a couple of months ago to the board. Not charges. I was one of the 8 students who crafted those demands. Me and my friends did that, and we also organized the Black Lives Matter teach-in that was this summer. And no, we did not follow a rubric. We did not follow a draft of some sort. We crafted that together, the 8 of us, by ourselves, with the English that we learned in the Chatham School District, with the grammar that we learned in the Chatham School District. So thank you to the English department for teaching us how to make a draft and how to list our grievances. And thank you to the social studies department who taught us that we have the right to petition. So we petitioned our community, and we got hundreds of signatures for those demands. Obviously it worked because we're here tonight and we had a great presentation about the English department, and hopefully we will have one about the social studies department too. I also want to reiterate the fact that in those demands we asked that we have an anti-racist course just on anti-racism like we do on the Holocaust and anti-Semitism, because I think it's very important. So thank you to the English department, to Mrs. Rocco, to Mr. Iannuzzi, to the board, to Dr. LaSousa. I yield my time.
Thanks, Matt. Jane, hold on until the next opportunity. Thanks. Anybody that hasn't spoken the first time? There's another opportunity in like 5 minutes if you just stand by for 1 minute. So I'm going to close the current public commentary and then just move over through the agenda, and then we can come back to the public commentary. I don't really have any comments. It's really an opportunity for the public to speak, not necessarily for the board to pontificate on that. So moving through the agenda, I'm going to go to personnel first. Ann?
Yes, I want to move agenda items A1 to A12 on the regular agenda, and then 9, 11, 14, and 15 on the addendum.
Any questions? Any of the personnel items? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Noted for the record that agenda items A1 to 12 from the regular agenda, addendum items 9, 11, 14, and 15 pass 7-0.
Thanks. Curriculum, Ms. Kenny? Oh, I'm sorry, finance and facilities, Matt?
I'd like to move action items B1 to 19 on your regular agenda. And
Again, just a reminder, the agenda is posted ahead of time Friday, so that's why we're going through it rather quickly. Any questions on finance or facility?
We have one on item 15, the addition of nice to see that since that just does it just go back to school full time or
I'm sorry, Lotta, I didn't
Oh,
hear your question.
I'm sorry, it's item 15, the addition of the CMS late bus route.
Do we have a late bus at CMS, given the modified schedule?
The late bus is we renewed the contract for the late bus, and the late bus is the Southern Boulevard PM kindergarten bus this year. Because due to the kindergartners going their normal session, the kindergarten dismissal is 3 o'clock when all of the other routes are finished. So since the middle school finishes and we have contracted a late bus and we're able to utilize the renewal at a reasonable price, I talked first student into using the middle school late bus as the Southern Boulevard late bus this year.
Okay.
So we just kind of revamped the route a little bit and to keep the renewal and the price low.
Is it written in the resolution this way contractually, or can you say Southern Boulevard?
I just noted, if you look at B14, it's just asterisk that the late bus is the S7, which is the PM kindergarten bus.
Yeah, okay, I see that in the text of 15 and the title, but that's fine. In 15?
No, in the further resolve, the CMS late bus is operating as the SBS PM kindergarten bus in B15.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in there, it's just the title's misleading. That's okay. We have the explanation, we're good. Thanks.
Sorry for the confusion.
No, we're good. Any additional questions or comments? No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Duly noted, agenda items B1 through 19 and addendum items 20 through 24 pass 7-0.
And curriculum?
Yes, I'd like to move.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Lotta.
Yep.
It's
I'd like
actually
to
written
move
right in front of me,
agenda
too.
items C1 to C4 for vote.
Any questions on any of those? Mike, you seconded it, right?
Yes, I did.
Any questions on any of the curriculum items? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Duly noted, C1 through C4 pass 7-0.
Okay, and our final item, policy, Mr. Ryan?
I'd like to move agenda item D1. Vote.
Okay. Does anybody have any question on the policies? Yeah, Mr. Ryan, some of these are Strauss Esme and some of them are just corrections.
Yeah, every time a regulation is changed.
Right, okay. Want to double check. Any questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Duly noted, agenda item D1 passes 7-0.
So we have our opportunity for board business. Does anybody have anything, Ms. Clark?
I know that on, I think it's October 27th, is the PSAT is being at Chatham High School. I'd really like to encourage our administration at the high school that are not charging students for this test and offer it to every student to encourage greater participation, especially in light, I know it's too late now. They already had to do it for pay for it, but considering the graduation pathways and what these kids may or may have to face, I think we need to give the easiest route in terms of providing testing opportunities. And I think when you ask families to sign up, the indication is come if you want to come if you don't. If we offer it to every student, I think we'll get greater participation. We can't force them to take it, but I think it will encourage students who might possibly not take it just to come and sit for the test. So I've said this before, I'm going to keep saying it as long as I'm on the board. I don't think if a test is being offered in our school during a school day, I don't think we should charge for the test.
Any additional board business?
I know part of the challenge this year, Michelle, is the spacing of the kids. It's a bigger challenge this year than it has been before. So I think we're giving it to the juniors, if I remember right.
That's junior class is the one that's in the hot seat right now because the current class is exempt. Your juniors are the big question mark. They're currently being held to those. So I'm just saying, I think if we're offering a test during the school day, that the school district should pay for it and offer it to every student who signs up for it and encourage participation.
Additional items?
Jill, I guess I just wanted to clarify something with Ms. Rocco. As a clarification, most of the items and books that you went over are currently already in progress. I just want to make sure that everyone knew, not that the work is done, but the things that you went over are already in progress at CMS, at the middle, at the high school, and at the elementary schools. And I think that's just an important.
Yeah, and it's iterative. It didn't start when some of our young alumni came in and said, and Bill, I don't think they said we're, irredeemable. I think they think that we are in fact redeemable, but again, it's their perception of a particular point in time of their lives. And that's fine. I mean, I don't think anybody on this table was offended by it. But again, it's an iterative process. We've been changing. I've been in the district for 30 years. I've been on the board for 9. We have changed the curriculum continuously, not because a parent came in and said they don't want us teaching Islam, not because another parent came in and said I don't want you talking about, LGBT communities, not because, somebody from another town came in and said you shouldn't be talking about, poverty and homelessness and what do you know about homelessness. So there's these social inequities have been unfortunately here forever, and they're probably going to continue on for a while, and we're going to do our part while we're here, and we have the students' attention, and we'll do the best they can. We didn't cave, as some people said, to the demands. We've been doing this literally for decades. I mean, there's an article in the Historic Society from 1935, Move to Chatham for the Excellent Schools. 1935, here we are, 2020, we're still doing it, we're still changing it, so I don't want people to think that this was, anybody was offended or that we think we're doing a bad job. We want to continue to change. I mean, that's great that one of the teachers apologized, that's fine, and if the students, accept that as, a mea culpa, then great. But we're still going to continue to do what we can. We're going to continue to change the curriculum. Some of the changes people are going to like. Some of the changes people are not going to like, and that's okay. That's part of the diversity, that's part of the dialogue, that's part of growing, and that's part of expanding the different perspectives. Like I said, I read Ghost Boys. Some people are going to not like it. They're not going to like the way maybe the police officer was portrayed or the way that Emmett Till, was brought into the historical context. That's okay too. That's part of the dialogue, and we're going to continue to do that. We didn't start in August when the students came in, and we're not going to stop, a month from now when the students aren't here anymore. So again, it's just part of the iterative process. It will continue on for long after we're off this stage and happily retired. And and it starts in the K to 3. If you think about it, the middle schoolers today, the book that they're reading and the material, 10 or 20 years from now, they are literally going to be the ones in charge. I mean, think about it. The 13-year-olds, 20 years from now, will be 33 in the prime of their lives. We are trying to prepare them for a successful future. And it's going to take all of us. It takes the community, it takes the school district, it takes the parents. And you know what? Some people are not going to like the process, but this is the journey we're on, and we're going to do it together. If we screw up, we'll say so. If we do something great, fantastic, then everybody benefits. But again, I don't want anybody to be offended. We did not feel that we were being charged with corruptness or irrehensibleness or even flat-out racism. But when you know better, you do better, and we'll continue to change the process.
So I think it's also just important to recognize that we shouldn't throw the word curriculum around too liberally. That there's a curriculum and there's a process that tends to be pretty lengthy and involved in developing a curriculum. But then there are a selection of materials, there are activities that teachers choose to do in order to carry out the curriculum. So like as an example, what I mentioned earlier when I visited the temple in Summit last year and made a connection there, and then we had a class visit the temple and listen to the testimonials and see some of the artifacts. We didn't change the curriculum. We had never done that before, but the curriculum is based on state standards, it's based on essential questions that our teachers develop, it's based on learning objectives, and so although there never had been a class before last year who visited this temple in Summit, the fact that the ones who were in the class last year didn't change the curriculum. It changed the learning experience to try to accomplish the objectives of the curriculum. So it's important. I don't want anyone to think that Ms. Rocco is just, anytime she selects a book to enhance the understanding of Transcendentalism and Thoreau and Emerson, that if she subs out one of the 6 texts that you saw in the book club with a different one, that's not changing the curriculum. It's selecting a different resource to accomplish the learning objectives that she has set forth with the curriculum. So it's a small detail in some ways, but it's important to kind of understand that.
Thank you. Anybody else have any other comments? And Dr. Lassus, it's fair to say that we're probably always going to continue to use current events to augment some of our dialogue and our learning.
Of course.
I mean, it didn't start with George Floyd. We've been talking about it, every time something comes up in the news, the kids talk about it. Tiananmen Square, Matthew Shepard, Sandy Hook, 9/11, it all comes into play. It's all relevant and part of the process. So,
well, if I were a biology teacher right now or a life science teacher, I probably would have addressed COVID by this point in the year, even though the term COVID wouldn't necessarily appear in a curriculum document. But the understanding of how a virus might work or some facet of the immune system or some other issue would become more relevant if I brought in COVID, because of course that's in all of our lives right now. So yes.
Other comments or board business? No? Okay, excellent. We have our second opportunity for public commentary. Jane?
Jane Devlin. Well, actually, Ms. Weber and Dr. Lassus articulated it far, far better than I could. I guess I could just say ditto. But I do want to say that I was at that Board of Ed meeting, and I've been following the Board of Ed meetings for a long time. And at no time did I hear anyone charge the school district of the Chathams or the Board of Ed meeting as being irredeemingly corrupt or unresponsive to change. So again, my support is there, and I never have heard that. So I would just continue to encourage the board to remain on track, to teach social justice, teach against systemic injustices, teach equality or equity for all, regardless of class, race, gender. That's not wrong. It's morally right. As Ms. Weber said, it's probably always been a part of our curriculum. Not probably, it has been part of our curriculum over the years. And maybe I would not have necessarily phrased everything the same way our student upstanders did when they came in front of the microphone or by their letters. But I do not see them as fill-in-the-blank kids. I see most, if not all, of the students that go through the educational system through Chatham as critical thinkers, intelligent students, well-learned, and they engaged in that that critical thinking. They felt passionate about their causes. And I do want to again thank the educators, the board, the administrators for being open to listening, to dialogue, and receptivity overall. Thank you.
Thanks, Jane. I just want to thank Heather and Steve again for your presentation. I know it's super late. Thank you for hanging in there with us. We look forward to hearing more down the line as the process evolves. I didn't want to say the word curriculum because I knew Dr. Sousa was going to say, stop using that word. Ready, so I think that concludes the meeting. There's no additional public comments. We do have an executive session. It'll be fairly quick, so if you could just stick around. I apologize for the late hour. I apologize for the technical difficulties at the beginning, but thanks for hanging in there. Have a great night. Drive safely, please. You can go in the band room.